Hello, everybody. It's Mr. Second Amendment here with Range Chris again, and this is part 2 of the shotgun blast. So the previous one dealt with coronavirus, the protests, and the politics and everything else kind of revolving around that. And we kind of felt like we needed to do a separate one that just delved around what is going on with guns and coronavirus, protests, pandemic, run on guns and ammo, and just kind of hash that out. It kind of needed its own. So Range Chris here has some points that we can work on. But yeah.
Hey guys, glad to be back. Let's get this started with. So it's a pandemic. There's a huge drought on farms right now. But if we could go back a couple months to before everything kind of kicked off and shelves started emptying out and ammo became scarce, so what would you get? Like you're a first-time gun buyer. What do you do? What would you get?
Well, I think some might call it the cop-out answer, but kind of what I've seen. So, I mean, Chris and I used to work in the gun industry back in California years ago, and I've been working for almost a year now at Ready Gunner in Orem, Utah, and just kind of seeing what's been happening. So that's kind of the background where we come from. Range Chris and I are really avid gun owner, Second Amendment dudes, and we've been in it to win it for many years now. And go back to the first shotgun blast if you want to get kind of more detail on that. But that's kind of where this is all coming from, just to frame that real quick. But I guess some could call it a cop-out answer, but I think at this point, with the way things are going and all the traffic and business and, excitement and panic buying and all the stuff, at least that I've seen since December and January, this is all coronavirus related. This is all people going to the grocery stores and suddenly, not seeing toilet paper and just panic buying, other things other than guns and ammo. This is the protests. This is, a lot of people, out of work or having to change occupations or make money any way they can. This is an uptick of burglaries and crazy things happening that people, are starting to discover their Second Amendment or feel the need to be a little bit more prepared than they are. So that's kind of where we're at. I mean, it's August 12th at the time that we're recording this. But anyway, getting to the point, it might sound like a cop-out answer, but kind of in the environment that we find ourselves in when it comes to, when you go to all the gun shops and gun stores and everything, and you see what's left or what's available, which is not ideal. I think the best gun in the world for anyone, especially if they're panic buying or they're brand new to guns, is the gun that's quality, that's durable, that they can still find ammunition for, and that they get some level of training or instruction on how to use it to the point that they're comfortable and confident using it. And it may not be the most ideal thing in the world, but it's a quality, durable, reliable firearm that ammunition can still be found in one way or another, and the actual person themselves feels very comfortable or confident shooting it, and they're able to load it, unload it, shoot it, make things happen, and not be a hazard to themselves or others with it. What do you think?
So I think my answer is going to be a little bit more refined, but to be perfectly frank, just as vague, really. If you're a first-time buyer and it's a pandemic and you've still got time and there's still shelves on the guns on the shelves, get a gun that is ergonomic to you and that you are capable of using, that you can rack the slide on, that you can load, that you are not going to have any kind of physical barriers to overcome when using it. Get something relatively simple. A modern semi-auto, be it a rifle or a pistol, is probably the best advice I could ever give anyone.
I would definitely agree with that. And most of the demand that I've seen in the past 4 to 5 months is I think the bottom line that needs to be discussed is this is not the same kind of rush that we've seen in the past. I mean, I was in the gun business for Sandy Hook and the elections and everything else. It's not the same thing, because in those kinds of instances, people were buying magazines and ammo and AR-15 lower receivers and just things that we thought or directly knew possibly were about to be outlawed. And before the government said they couldn't have it or something was about to pass, they wanted to get it to be grandfathered in, or at least have it. That's not the case at all, that I've seen throughout all of this. Really, what I've seen this entire time, which explains why we have, several hundred stripped AR-15 lower receivers. We still have a whole bunch of PMags and magazines. We have all the usual suspects. This rush is very unlike anything I've seen so far, in that people are trying to buy things that are useful for right now and today. I want to buy a handgun that I can carry on my person or use for home defense. I want to get a shotgun. I want to get something for the home. Like, I need something with shells or rounds. I need something I can use like today, right now. And I think that's what makes this whole thing different. But having a quality, competent, durable, reliable semi-automatic pistol or rifle that you can still source the ammunition for relatively one way or another, and that you can feel competent and confident with, I think is a really good way to go. So I agree with that.
So I kind of want to expand on something you said just now, which is the thing you can have on your person, be it the shotgun or the pistol or what have you. And there's a lot going around right now, especially now that we're well into it, and the metaphorical drought is kind of upon us. Where you've told a lot of stories to me when you get home from work about people who are like, oh, well, my relation so and so who has law enforcement, etc., or is he's been an avid shooter for years. He's telling me to go out and get X, Y, and Z, so I need X, Y, and Z. Even though this relation to that person, doesn't necessarily know what gun stores have in stock right now, and maybe they're leaning a little heavily towards their own personal bias as to what they own and what they like. What's your opinion on that?
What makes it tough is guys like me and Range Chris, but certainly you guys listening right now, I think you're in a very similar situation where you are probably the point of contact for your friends and family when it comes to he has a bunch of guns and I haven't really dabbled in it, and he said I should probably get one, and he would totally show me how to use it and all of that, but I never did that. But Uncle Larry or my brother or whoever you are to them, oh, he has guns and stuff, so I need to ask his opinion. And one of the more, I guess, distinct things I've noticed is it seems like some of that information might be either inaccurate or outdated. And by outdated, I'll say, as an example, I'll have people like, oh, my dad was a cop and he retired in 2005, but he was a police officer for 30 years. And he says, I need a Glock 22, a 40 caliber full-size Glock. And maybe back in that snapshot in time, that really was when it came to guns, ammunition, propellants, bullet construction, and technology, and kind of where we were at that time, that would not necessarily be horrible advice at all. But where we are now, does it make sense? So I've seen a lot of that. I've seen a lot of people that, it's, Uncle Larry has some kind of, let's just say it's a Taurus, and he shoots it 2 times a year, and he loves it, and he just, open carries it in his Uncle Mike's Universal Holster in Walmart and everything back when that was cool. And, he says Taurus is what I need to get, so I want to look at your Tauruses. And it's in some ways, on at least the salesman side of the counter, it's almost a matter of undoing the damage that was done, kind of in a way, but also attempting, I mean, and you only get 15 to 20 minutes with somebody at a maximum, you know, with what we've been seeing, where it's like you're trying to undo this damage, or the information you were given or the suggestions you were given are not wrong, but it's 2 or 3 decades later.
Or they're just not jiving with what current availability is.
And that's another thing too, which is ironic to the example, because which is going to lead into one of our points, but you know, you would not be totally at a loss for finding ammunition if you actually did look into buying a 40 caliber pistol, assuming anyone has one. Most of the pistols, at least that we have, are 9mm, and we have to intentionally order or special order you know, pistols that are not chambered in 9mm, you know, and I'm chiefly looking at 40 cal. And that's kind of interesting because 40 Smith & Wesson kind of had its day, and before coronavirus and the protests and all this craziness, 40 Smith & Wesson, like 40 cal was on the way out. It was kind of, the manufacturers don't want to make it. Glock has only taken it to the Gen 4. They haven't done anything Gen 5 in anything but 9. Or 22, I guess, with a Glock 44, but some calibers that were like, okay, it had its day, but we can do better with what we have now, and it's kind of dying, it's going extinct, have kind of made a comeback, because I have thousands of rounds of 40 cal at the gun shop that anybody could buy. So if you had a 40 caliber pistol, you'd be in business. You'd be good.
40 cal PCC as well, pistol caliber carbine.
Which I just have to say as a side note, I don't like pistol caliber carbines as much, if I can help it. There are definitely times and places for that, but it's not my favorite type of gun. But that's for a whole host of other reasons. But
one of the points that Ryan and I were talking about is if you're panic buying, if you find yourself in the situation now where, you know, Uncle Joe Bob, who was a cop, tells you to get Glock 19 because Glock 19 is the end-all be-all, and you go into a store and you ask for a Glock 19 and they don't have it, don't get mad. Don't get mad, because you're not the first person who's gotten in there. You know, tell whoever you're sending in there if they're looking for a Glock 19, they can't find one, there's other options. So one of the points we wanted to make is if you're panic buying and you need to buy something, you absolutely have to supply yourself with something. Get something that, you know, isn't going to be a setback for you. I hesitate to use the term isn't going to suck, but like if a 40 caliber PCC, which to be perfectly frank would be much more pleasant to shoot than a 40 caliber handgun. You know, I'd much rather have a 40 cal AR, and you can get the same kind of magazine capacity, especially if it's running Glock mags. You know, so I would say do that, because that's ergonomic. It's a very basic system.
I think the more blunt way, kind of circling back to what you just said, the more blunt way that I would say that, based on what I've seen, and I mean, we're all working overtime. We're all trying to keep up. We're getting the guns in, and they last a day or two at maximum. They go out. But kind of going back to what you were saying back there, I think we are too late in the game to be picky. And by we, I mean it's people who are first-time gun buying, and maybe they have this crazy outdated advice from someone in their family or someone they know. Maybe they actually have really good advice, which I have seen on occasion, of, you know, this is the kind of gun or thing that you need, but we don't have the inventory anymore. We are 4 to 5 months too late to be picky. And, you know, if somebody said you need to get a Gen 5 Glock 19 MOS, and surprise, every gun shop you go to within a 50-mile radius does not have one to speak of, maybe it's time to look at alternative options. And I have a lot of respect for the Glocks and how reliable and durable they are, but they're not the only show in town. It's not the only gun that's going to fulfill that need, especially now when inventory and ammunition, everything is so tough. Tough to get in, tough to find, tough to acquire. And I just think the bottom line is not to be as picky and be willing to entertain, really it comes down to a down select of, competent quality options that are going to fit whatever kind of need that you have, and we're almost half a year beyond the point where you can be picky and just hold out for waiting for exactly the type and kind of gun you want, and just not buying anything until finally you find one. I mean, I guess you could, but if you don't have a gun at all and you're trying to find something that's going to be effective, that's going to work, that's going to help defend your house, your domicile, your family, and do the job that you want it to do, you've in a way, you've kind of lost the right to be picky. It's too late for that. I don't have time anymore. I don't have time to show you every single option from every manufacturer. And then, we actually have ammo in stock, so you can go rent, the 60 plus rental handguns we have, so you can go try and see what you like, and then come back inside the gun shop and then purchase what you want. Those days are over. So,
I mean, they'll be back, but
they will be back.
We're in a suspended time right now.
Right now, it's a tough time, and I've had guys coming in like, hey, my neighbors got broken into last night, and I don't live in a very good area, and I've always kind of thought about getting a gun, but I just kind of, I don't know, I just never got around to it, never really put it high on the priority list. And after last night, and it could have been my house instead of my neighbor's, but it was my neighbor's instead of my house, but I don't have anything, and I need something like now, and I need a gun now, and I need ammunition, and I need stuff, and I just need to see, like, what do you have? And also constraining that kind of situation is budget of like, hey, ideally I would have saved up over several months, done a lot of homework, I would have looked for all this stuff and figured out what the best gun for me was, but neighbors got broken into, I live in a terrible neighborhood, everything is crazy right now. I just need something with a little bit of ammo to go with. I just need something right now. We're kind of a day late and a dollar short in pretty much every way you can classify it, and it's more just kind of finding. I guess the thesis of what I'm trying to say is you've kind of lost the right to be picky because you can't be picky anymore, at least right now.
Well, it's much like when toilet paper started disappearing off shelves way back in February, and it's like, you know what, if you can find one-ply value brand toilet paper, like you can't just be like, well, where's the Charmin? It's just not there, guys. And so one thing, because we've touched on this, as you guys, the listener base, you might possibly be that recommendation that people are going to and asking questions of, and you might have what you consider the ideal that you think they should get. Having worked a gun sales floor and had people come in looking for X, Y, and Z that they were told is the latest and greatest and is the thing they have to have, and then not being able to have that and provide that for a customer. You guys, what I'm going to say is maybe have a tiered suggestion list. Ryan and I are both on board. Glock's top tier, high end. Not the most expensive thing in the room, but great guns. Ryan and I also frequently will make fun of Springfield XDs. However, at the same time, okay, if you've got a table in front of me and the option is a high pointer Springfield XD, I'm going to grab the Springfield XD.
I totally will, and just not to cut you off, just a quick aside. I was never too hot on the XD line for many years, and until I actually began gunsmithing and working on guns and rental guns and customer guns, that actually made me hate them a lot more than ever.
Okay, so internally they're Croatian junk, but that's not what we're talking about here right now. So Right, so if it's a high point or an XD, I'm probably going to pick up the XD. It's a little bit more ergonomic. Striker fired. It's
you could take the high point though.
But here's my
if it's a survival situation, you can use the high point to nail in some tent stakes,
or knock the pins out of my XD so I can do some work on it. But if on the table, then like somebody else snatches that XD out from in front of me, like that's no longer an option. That's off the table, and my option is a high point or a $125 Saturday Night Special or a Rossi Revolver from 1975.
Something from the Ring of Fire,
Jimenez
or something like that.
Not to knock, and I'm going to do last time I didn't do any direct name drops, but I'm going to do some now. Not to knock Ian and Carl, but if there's a llama on the table or a high point, I don't know that llama from whoever owned it before, so I'm going to pick up the high point because at least I know that, it's probably going to work some of the time. I don't know what could be wrong with that llama. It's a lot older.
At least the sights are good. I like sights. Those are good.
We're not doing that yet. We're going to get there. But yeah, so what I'm saying is basically just have a tier of firearms where it's like, okay, you kind of want this. If you can, and someone's asking you for advice, try to go with them, or at least make your cell phone available for them to send you pictures and text messages and talk to you while they're trying to do their purchasing. Because that's what I try to do for my friends. Whenever they're like, "Oh my God, I want a gun. What do I do?" It's fun. What's going to be fun about this topic is Ryan and I are going to butt heads a lot on this one because there's some very specific things that he and I agree on, and some very specific things that he and I put a lot of different value in.
That's totally true, and I think you guys are going to enjoy this because Range Chris and I don't. Both of us have a very rich history and experience with firearms, both in military service and civilian collection and use and competition and training and all kinds of stuff. Between him and I, we have like a National Guard armory worth of guns. At least before we had that horrible boating accident last week.
Oh man, yeah, it was terrible.
It was awful.
Just everything went blub blub blub.
It was awful. We had all of our guns and ammo, and it went to the bottom of the lake. It was terrible. But getting back on point, I think you guys are going to enjoy this because despite how much experience and usage and knowledge and guns we have and all that, we are going to have differences of opinion, and I think you guys are going to enjoy hearing that. But one thing I wanted to mention was the shotgun, the boomstick, the gauge,
scattergat, if you will,
the street howitzer, yeah. And that seems like when things really started to get, kicking off and people, like the panic was on and we noticed a noticeable change in daily business that, okay, it's on. People are panic buying. One of the first casualties of inventory that happened was the shotgun. Chiefly, I'm talking, the self-defensive, home defense.
Oh, you mean like the Joe Biden special over under?
No,
not that.
No, we still have some Biden specials in the shop. We got some of them Stoker Coach guns side by side. But at least the 18.5-inch, 20-inch, pump action, chiefly 12 gauge shotguns,
Remington 870s, Mossberg 500s,
the 500s, even those garbage Turkish guns that come in, the escorts, everything else, like the high point of shotgun. But like anything that was a 12 gauge that had a pump on it with a barrel less than a mile was like gone as fast as possible. And all of our shotgun shells, from birdshot, buckshot, slug, you name it, gone. And the one thing I want to say is, just looking at the situation with a shotgun, I think there's pros and cons. There's risk in any course we take, and there's going to be pros and cons in any choices we make. But with the shotgun, really the primary advantage it has is shot for shot. If I can only have one shot that's going to be placed effectively on target, with a rifle, pistol, or shotgun, the shotgun is going to be the most powerful thing that you can legally buy without having to, move into destructive device or anything crazy like that. And also, side benefit number 2 is, even in the banned states, just Elmer Fudd with a shotgun. Shotguns are not necessarily regulated either intensely or at all. In even states like New York, Connecticut, California, Hawaii, places like that. So you have this powerful shot-for-shot thing that also has the side benefit for those of you listening from occupied territory or banned states or different countries that all you can get is a hunting shotgun. That thing has some potential, and shot for shot, it's the most powerful thing you can access. That's very affordable. Pump action shotgun, $350, maybe a little less than that depending what you get. But there's some very significant downsides that I think don't make it an ideal home defense situation for me. One being it's a mandatory, at least if we're talking pump action shotguns, the most economically viable, easily to tap into shotguns, pump actions for a couple or several $100. Problem number one, it's a mandatory two-handed weapon. To use it, you need two hands, and you need the length of pole, you need some upper body muscle mass, you need some dexterity, you need some training so you don't short stroke that thing, short pump it, that you're actually getting reliable extraction, ejection, and feeding and chambering.
And all that takes consistency of use and discipline and just practice at using.
Which, if you are a first-time gun buyer, you can't even find ammo anywhere for it, and you're not really getting the training because all of our training classes are booked up for the next 2 months. So you're not getting the training, you can't find the ammo, you're not even shooting it or practicing with it at all. Or, if it's not at all, it's not a lot. There's a high chance that thing might be a problem in terms of you successfully not dying. Let's put it that way. So that mandatory length of pole, dexterity, strength issue, and a familiarization experience of not short stroking or having problems on it. Problem number two is shot placement. I think thanks to the movies and everything else, you get this idea that, I'm just going to throw the barrel of the gun down the hallway, pull the trigger, just get crazy with the cheese whiz, and then...
Sean Connery and the Untouchables just pointed at the door, pull the trigger, the guy flies off the balcony.
Just like, nuclear explosion, Hiroshima, like everything just goes to hell in front of the barrel. Like, that's not how shotguns work. Even if double, triple-aught buck, even T-ball, six-shot... There's going to be, if we're talking home defense range, which is, surprise, very close, you have to aim that thing. You pretty much, I always tell people when I'm teaching on the range, and they can see it for themselves when we actually pattern, their groups from 5 yards to 25 yards, like, hey, you need to aim this thing. You need to essentially treat it like a rifle. Like, you actually have to aim this thing and place your shots because, the scatter gun, you might find out it doesn't really scatter quite a lot at very close range. And that's true, whatever shot placement you have. Another disadvantage is over-penetration. My ideal home defense load is double or triple-aught buck, preferably some federal flight control if I have to use a shotgun. And if I miss, that is a whole lot of lead, 1 ounce, 1 1/8 ounce of lead that is just fucking moving. And it's not going to, plot twist, it's not going to stop in drywall, insulation, 2x, and another set of drywall. That shit's going to keep going.
And if any of our listeners don't already follow, one of the other gun tubers, I suppose you'd call them, for lack of a better word, that Ryan and I both watch is Paul Harrell. And he has several very in-depth, very detailed videos about this particular subject. And one other video I would suggest watching would be In Range TV, Ian and Carl, and their pistol grip shotgun versus a stock shotgun versus a side-by-side shotgun. Those are great resources. I highly recommend you guys watch them because that's really, really relevant to what we're talking about.
I think that's an outstanding recommendation. I think what Ian and Carl did on In Range, where they tested a shotgun with the stock versus a shotgun with just simply a pistol grip and compared time and accuracy and kind of how things were going. I mean, just to kind of save you that video, you should watch it. But if you don't, I mean, you have to aim a shotgun to make that pattern work for you at 7 yards, 10 yards. That it's not going to be pulling the trigger and the whole wall gets just a spray of stuff. Like, you pretty much need to treat that thing like a rifle, like it's shooting just one projectile. Because and if you don't believe us, you can check it out. If you want to put targets out and go shoot some buckshot, like go check it out. You will see that pattern does not really start opening up until 10 to 15 meters away is when things really start to kind of open up, at least to 10 inches paper plate size. So that's another thing. And plus, do you really want to be the guy who's going to just like aim the barrel somewhere down the hallway and pull the trigger on something you haven't seen or you don't know what it is, and you're going to spray the entire wall, even if that was the case? Like, no, like every shot you fire, you are accountable for. And a shotgun, I feel like I see it day in, day out, people coming in, looking for pump action ghetto blasters, Biden specials, anything they can get. It's like, dude, it's not like Hollywood. Like, you need to aim this thing and it's going to matter. And the next downside is going to be reloading. Reloading a pump action or semi-automatic shotgun that, most of them do not take magazines of any kind. So reloading a shotgun is a fucking disaster.
Familiarity, discipline, and just putting in the reps. And real quick caveat: so we're not related to InRange. We're not related to Forgotten Weapons. We don't know those guys. We don't know Paul Harrell. They're just people that are. I mean, me personally, I don't know how Ryan feels, but I'm sure he'll chime in a second. I respect the amount of information that they have out there. From what I've seen, it's good information. And I'm not saying that you guys don't know what you're talking about. So if you have these recommendations and you have your reasonings for them, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not a professor of this. I'm not some like expert on all subject matters at all times. That's really not the point here. It's just my opinion. What I'm trying to if you guys need resources, we know of stuff that we can put out there. Recommend what you want to recommend, and most of all, just kind of work with the people that are asking for help.
Yeah, I agree with that. My bottom line is, when it comes to the shotgun, that I want, or any guns at all, especially in times like now, I want people to be able to get what they can. It's still a quality purchase. They can still find ammunition. They may have to hunt or go to many different shops and find what they need, and then get the training and time, which we're going to hit on that. But when it comes to the shotgun, I don't want to get shot with one, especially if it's got double or triple aught buck or slug. I don't want to get shot with that.
Yeah, no thanks.
No, but a shotgun in effective, competent, trained, lethal hands is not something I would want to go up against. The challenge is to get to that kind of level requires the training and experience and knowledge and working with the gun and really working hard on those reloads and shot placement and everything, that I think 90% or more of people who rely upon, especially a pump action shotgun for home defense, I do not believe they are at that kind of level.
And you're only as successful as your worst day, especially in a home defense situation. And if you short stroke that shotgun and go into racket, or say you buy a semi-auto and it's not quite all the way through its break-in period, then you're going to get a stovepipe or a jammed bolt or a double feed. And on a shotgun, those aren't horrible malfunctions. They're just really not preferable when compared to other stuff out there.
Well, and that's another thing too, is like people, kind of the go-to thing was, oh, I need a home defense shotgun. And some guys with a little bit more money or a higher budget were looking at semi-automatic shotguns. Oh, this one's cool because it takes magazines. That's awesome. But the thing about a semi-automatic shotgun, all the same rules apply, but the thing that makes it a little bit more intricate is any semi-automatic shotgun that you're going to purchase, you absolutely, in an ideal environment, I would buy, Winchester, Federal, Remington. I would buy all these different loads of buckshot, see what the gun reliably functions in, see what my patterns and groups are looking like, and then eventually pick the load that the gun seems to like and shoot the straightest with and go with that. And we're simply not in that kind of environment where you can buy, 8 or 10 different boxes of ammo, test them all, and then pick the one that you like, and then bulk up on that type of ammo. And semi-autos get really weird because different manufacturers will use a different style or angle or type of crimping in the shells. They'll have different dram charge and propellant. Some gas systems, or in the case of most civilian Benelli designs, with the rotating inertia bolts, or the Versamax with the different holes and the different parts of the barrel. Semi-automatic shotguns will have different designs. They will have different load gates, different feed ramps and chambers and gas systems, and how it's working, that you absolutely critically need to go out there and test, what does this gun like to feed with, and what is it going to jam every time with. And we're just not in that kind of environment where you can buy almost a dozen different brands and types of shells, try them out, and then just bulk up on the type that the gun seems to be reliable and likes. It's not, we're not living in that kind of situation right now. So
I'm going to springboard off of that, and once more, because this is kind of my thing, unpopular opinion puffin idea here. I don't like shotguns for home defense firearms.
Neither do I.
I just don't.
Neither do I.
So,
no.
I don't know how you guys feel about it. If shotguns are your go-to, great. I'm not hating on that. I'm not saying it's a bad idea for everybody. I'm just saying, for me, for the situation in which I see things, from my perspective, not the best way to go. And one of the points that Mr. Second Amendment and I disagree on is he believes that your number one go-to should be your rifle.
Yes.
Which I understand and I get, and I can pro-con that. But for me, my number one recommendation, especially for people who are new to the firearms industry, new to shooting, my classic response used to be go for a 6, 7, or 8 shot 357 revolver with a 4-inch barrel loaded with 38 Special Plus Ps.
Well, it's not a bad suggestion.
It's not, but pros and cons. Everything is pros and cons. You got trade-offs with everything.
Of course, yeah.
But now, I would probably say if you can get a semi-auto, go with semi-auto. So pros, cons with the revolver. Right, so limited capacity, sure. Limited barrel length, sure. Maybe a double action is a bit long for some people. I don't think your average male or female ages 18 to 40, you're going to have a problem with it. I'm not saying this is the perfect gun for everybody. I'm not saying this is the perfect gun for every situation. But from what I've seen for the situation, for self-defense shooting in one's home, it's a good compromise on a lot of areas and points that will get the job done and get you through a civilian shootout, right? Like what's the term?
Lawful self-defensive shoot.
Lawful self-defense. And by that I mean 6 rounds. That's a lot of rounds for personal defense. There's a lot of information out there about how many rounds get used in shootouts and whatnot. And honestly, 6 rounds is plenty. If you need to do a reload, it's a very easy, very simple system to reload. Although I disagree. I think it's pop the cylinder open, ditch the shells, put new ones in.
When you've got shit in your pants and you've painted half your walls with blood and crazy shit's happening and you can't hear anything and you don't have fingers anymore, you've got tunnel vision and adrenaline packed, you just have flippers, your hands are just huge flippers.
At the same argument, where's your fucking slide stop? You can't find that shit.
No, that's why you bear claw, the slide and just, slingshot that shit and go.
And is that what everyone that works at Ready Gunner tells people how to rack that slide?
No, I'm just saying, I intensely detest guns that have not discovered the magazine yet. And back in the 19th century when Samuel Colt patented, the wheel gun and this revolving cool guy cylinder thing that has one barrel and you can cock the hammer and do stuff. That's great. Yeah, back in the 19th century, that was the shit, dude. That was it. But here in 2020, over a century later, magazines are fucking cool. And I'm not negating it because, revolvers do have some definite advantages. They're the only handgun that I would trust or know of that if you had it in a purse or a winter jacket pocket or something and you needed to hammer off 5 or 6 shots, it's going to reliably do it without jamming or malfunctioning or having a problem.
And if one of your rounds doesn't work, you just pull the trigger.
Pull the trigger and just keep going. It's just, I'm saying, and the biggest thing that I say that I firmly believe in is, like, revolvers are cool for the first 5, 6, maybe 7 shots. And then if you're still alive to reload and you're still having a problem, everything fucking sucks. Because now you have to eject all those casings by slamming on, the ejector rod, assuming you're getting your cylinder released and everything. And now you got to pull out, hopefully, your HKS or Safari Land speed loaders.
If you don't just have a handful of loose rounds.
Right, which you probably don't have because you're fucked up. So you have a handful of loose rounds, or maybe you're like, a cop from the 70s or 80s and you got like your speed strip thing or that little purse of spare rounds and like it's cool. And you're putting 2 in at a time, and then you got to remember, oh shit, it's a Smith & Wesson, so it loads from right to left, and that's how the cylinder turns. Or like, holy shit, I have a Colt, so it actually goes from left to right, it goes clockwise. Like, there's a lot of things that go wrong when it comes time to reload. Everybody's all about the revolver until it's time to reload, and then everybody shits the bed. At least that's what I've seen most of the time. And I'm not saying wheel guns don't have a time and place or advantages. I'm just saying one of the significant disadvantages that I've seen quite a lot as of late is, somebody comes in, maybe it's Grandma Jenkins comes in, and her cop son says she needs a 38 special 5-shot J-frame snub-nosed revolver.
I'm going to interrupt. I just want to point out, I said this was not for Grandma Jenkins. This is not for Grandma.
But I'm telling you, this is real feedback. This is real life. This is what I deal with like every day. Where they come in.
But that gets to the earlier point where we're saying that maybe the recommendation that people are making are not the right recommendations.
No, it's true. It's true. It's fair. I'm just saying, on a revolver, there is no recoil spring. There's no slide. There's no polymer receiver that flexes and takes in the recoil. It helps out. Like, when you pull the trigger on that thing, you are taking in exactly 100% of the physics of squeezing that shit through the forcing cone down the barrel and towards probably, hopefully, the target if you're good. But you're taking all of that recoil into your wrist, assuming you had the finger and trigger strength to pull that double action. I got people that are old, people with arthritis, people that have really small hands and they're trying to get on a K or L frame, something like that, which is not ideal. But again, we're dealing with unideal circumstances. I'm just saying.
I mean, I also pointed out that now, times have changed. I would recommend a semi-auto.
I would also recommend a semi-auto. I'm not saying the revolver is worthless. And I guess in the spirit of Paul Harrell, if you're living in a banned state or a country where some kind of wheel gun is the only thing that you can access or legally have,
something is better than nothing.
Absolutely, 100% agreed. But I don't like it because I'm also a firm believer that home defense guns absolutely need to have some kind of white light or weapon light attached to it, is what I would say. And short of the Smith & Wesson R8, like their SWAT 357 revolver they made that has 1913 rail on the bottom of the barrel, I don't know of any other mainstream revolvers that are going to have a way of putting on a competent, successful weapon light on that thing. Not that it's needed 100% of the time, but I think PID, positive identification, is essential. And like Range Chris knows, but like I am 100% like crazy with the cheese whiz when it comes to weapon lights. I got lights on everything. So I got lights on my lights. I got lights everywhere. Like I've drinking all of the light Kool-Aid. There's no lights for anyone else. Like weapon lights mounted to the gun in a way that I can actuate and turn on in multiple ways that are easy and ergonomic to get to. I'm a huge fan of knowing like what the hell is in front of your gun before you kill it.
Well, let's circle back to that a little bit because you brought up Grandma Jenkins, and that kind of segues into another point that I wanted to bring up. And I'm not gonna tell anybody that they're wrong, except in this one scenario. If you are a man and you are telling a woman that she needs a pocket gun, a 380, in order to defend herself because it is a small firearm, you're wrong. That's going to be the one. That's one hill that I will die on because
Why?
I do not believe that at all. And
Why?
the main thing there is ergonomics.
Okay.
Just 100%. That is entirely based on ergonomics. Now, I will eat my words if you put a 380 in a female's hands and she is good with it and she can handle the recoil well, and it's not some micro pistol with sights that are literally an inch and a half away from each other, and it's if you've got a 380 that's perfectly aimable, or maybe something the size of like a Tokarev, then I'll eat my words. But for the most part, if you are taking a first time female shooter to the store to get her a personal defense firearm, and you put like a Ruger LCP in her hands, which by the way, I hate those triggers. Not a bad gun, great gun, fantastic backup gun, fantastic firearm in and of itself. The trigger, though, if you're trying to do accurate placements, is just garbage.
Oh no, it's awful. I've always like Ruger. I've always looked at is like the great value brand of guns. They just kind of dabble in everything. They do a couple things really good, and the rest is just kind of there.
But that's it. Okay. Women, despite the stereotype of them being the weaker, gentler sex. They can handle guns, guys. Like I hope everyone understands that they are just as capable with firearms as anyone else.
Well, I've seen on the range women actually do far better than we do initially out the gate, because as men, I think we just go out there and fuck it up. We don't listen to anything. But women, I think, are more. They have like a healthy respect for what's going on.
Gary Rico always said that women were more patient than men, so they were willing to shoot better just to get that more accurate shot placement.
I don't know if it was that maybe edgy would be the word, but I don't think he's wrong, at least at a conclusion basis. I think the women that I've instructed over the years, whether it was group lessons, private lessons, whatever, I think there was more of an understanding like, holy shit, this is powerful, it's loud, there's a lot of empowerment here, but there's a lot of power in my hands. And if used wrong, this could be really bad. And I want to do good, and I want to know what I'm doing, and I really want, like, they're hanging on to every word that you say. And if you're doing the right job as an instructor, you're stacking the fundamentals. You're not overloading like any student or person with like 20 things at once. You're just kind of working on one or two things, and once they seem to have that down, you're just adding more and adding more. They always do better, and they're always safer. Always. Like it's just always been that way.
Or at least they pick it up faster than...
They pick it up faster because they actually listen and pay attention and like actually put it into practice. And I think there's a self-awareness there that they employ that just as men, quite honestly, we just go out there and fuck it up. And I don't know how else to say it. But that's kind of that. I just want to circle back to what you were saying. Range Chris just escaped California, where they have a handgun roster, so they're stuck in like the early 2000s of firearms technology, of what they can buy.
If you want a Gen 3 Glock, it's a great place to live.
Yeah, as long as Glock continues to make the Generation 3. But he hasn't seen or doesn't know about like a Smith & Wesson M&P 380 Shield Easy, which the slide was made to be easy to rack. It's got a grip safety. It's in 380 or 9mm. It's got a manual safety or not, depending on what model you get. And that is one of the more successful 380 options. I think and now just using like my gunsmith brain, when you have, it's kind of this catch-22 where, you know, there's a lot of guys like, oh yeah, she needs like a little pocket or purse carry 380. And the smaller you get with the gun and the physical mass of the slide and the gun, the stiffer that recoil spring just physically has got to be to reliably cycle and feed the gun. So what you end up with is really small, cool guns like, you know, James Bond, the PPK, and all that cool stuff. But if you actually have one in person, you rack that or attempt to rack the slides, like, holy shit, this is a problem.
Well, let me point out some of the issues here. One, you're going to go with a super lightweight frame because it's a carry gun, so it needs to be light, so you carry it. Two, it's got to be small and compact, which means there's going to be less mass to the firearm overall, which means that on top of the lightweight frame and the lightweight of the mass overall of the firearm, you're now dealing with a physics problem. And this gets back to my ergonomics, and what I should have really stated was a body mechanics issue. Okay? Because you're taking a relatively, for its size of the smaller calibers, it's pretty potent, 380 for felt recoil on a lightweight small gun with a recoil spring that's already going to be, for some people, difficult to pull back, especially, you know, some females, and some skinnier, smaller dudes too, actually.
Yeah,
and
true.
Once more, that sight base, you know, and just height over bore for your hand, and just the pocket pistols are great. Let me say that, like subcompact and compact guns and backup guns, 380s, 32s, they're great. If you're point shooting from just in front of your chest at a target that's maybe 5, at most 10 yards away.
Not even, man. It's
and that's extreme. That's extreme. But you know what? That's what they're for. They, you know, a lot of them use gutter sights. It's not an accurate gun. It's not made for hitting 50 yards away. But if you can master that skill, I can promise you, go to a couple ranges, you can make some money doing that. Not that I've ever done anything like that before. But it's you've got this orchestra of small little things that stack and just make them not great. And you know, a lot of guys will bring in women and like, oh, you know, I got to get the Smith & Wesson Airweight. You know, what's that? It's not aluminum. What's that made out of? Scandium frames in 38. And you know what? 38's a soft shooting round. But you put it on a scandium frame with a barrel that's less than an inch long, and it hurts. It hurts. I find it uncomfortable. I don't like it. I wouldn't want to shoot it. And I'm not going to practice with it. I'm just not, because it's uncomfortable to use.
I think, for me, the priority when it comes to a competent, successful self-defense gun is shot placement. And 50 caliber, like 50 BMG, if you're not placing quality shots or you're totally missing the target, then what the hell? Like, it doesn't even matter. But there's a lot of people who have been smoked down with 22 long rifle. There's a lot of people. I mean, the thing is, it's all about shot placement.
I will completely agree on that. It's completely off topic. It's really not what we were going to bring up. The caliber wars are over. They don't matter. It's irrelevant.
I think it matters in a lot of ways.
It's a secondary, or if not tertiary thing. Shot placement is key. Shot placement is literally should be your focus.
I agree with that, because if we have Grandma Jenkins and she has a Glock 20, 10 millimeter Glock, which is, that's got some legs, that's going to do some stuff, terminal ballistics are superb, everything's awesome. But she can't load it, unload it, rack it, shoot it, and do follow-up multiple shots with that gun and actually place shots that need to be placed and place them in places that are going to stop the threat. And, it's a really effective handgun. It's super cool. Caliber's great, but, she's not able to place accurate shots and everything like that. I'd rather, that's not a good pick. I mean, but if she had a
Ruger SR5 and she's hitting A zone on just all the time,
or maybe like a Ruger SR22, 22 pistol.
Yeah, that's what I meant. SR22.
Yeah, and it's like she's hitting fucking everything. and she's doing it fast and effective, and she's tracking the target and recoil mitigation.
She's Riggs from Lethal Weapon 1. She's doing the smiley face on the target.
Yeah. And it's like, you know what? Like, that's what's going to matter. Shot placement, you know, a 22 well placed, not my ideal preferred self-defense caliber, I think, for both of us, but a 22 well placed, and especially 10 of them in the span of 4 seconds well placed, is far better than the 10 millimeter Glock that's just going to miss the target completely and over penetrate and then go into your neighbor's, you know, apartment and cause problems. Like, I'm all about shot placement, which, you know, kind of circling back to PCCs, pistol caliber carbines. I have an intense hatred for them, but
that's a mechanical thing. That's separate.
Oh no, like, it's the thing is, like, what is going to increase shot probability and shot placement and lethality and success? It's going to be a gun that you can shoulder up in both hands and actually get a sight picture with your dominant eye, both eyes open, you know, observing the battlefield or whatever's happening in front of you, and having that kind of stability to increase shot probability that you're actually going to place shots effectively and where you want them to go. I firmly believe that handguns, traditional pistols, are the hardest discipline to get really good at, and they require the most concurrent maintenance to stay good at.
Time and effort.
Versus, let's say you have a rifle and you have a huge sight radius between the front and rear sight, or you have some cool guy scope or optic on it.
You got a red dot, just point click.
Exactly, and it's braced up with, you know, your whole body. You're cradling the weapon system. You got 2 hands on it, and you're just, you know, using the easy button with that red dot, placing on the target. Any problems you have on the fundamentals of marksmanship, sight alignment, sight picture, trigger squeeze, trigger pull, breathing, everything, any problems you have on any of that, you can kind of mask it. It can kind of disappear into the background or not present itself as big of an issue on a rifle or a shotgun if you're trained. But a pistol, it's like there's no cover, there's no concealment. Any problems you have with your fundamentals are absolutely going to show up.
There's a lot more room for error with a handgun. I will 100% give you that.
Sight radius is not a lot. 2 hands floating out there in space. There's nothing cradled up in your shoulder.
Pretty wide.
You know, it's not the place where you're going to be able to mask or mitigate any problems you have with the fundamentals. So that's where I'll give it to, you know, pistol caliber carbines, as much as I hate them. And I think they're generally just recreational training aids, but in some cases it may be, you know, a good thing to get if you have someone that, I mean, if we're facing the prospect of, like, hey, I want a home defense gun for myself and my wife, and I'm 6'2" and she's, you know, 4' nothing, and we want one gun to rule them all, and we want one gun that's going to work for both of us. I would rather them go with a pistol caliber carbine as opposed to a pump action shotgun or a revolver, like, every day of the week. I would do that.
A bolt release is much easier to hit than a pump action. A bolt release is much easier to use when you go to slide lock or bolt lock. A bolt release is just really shoot until the threat is eliminated and then reload on an empty chamber. It just makes sense. It's easy. It's simple. It does not have the complicated plunger system of a revolver. It does not have the potentiality for limp wristing or stovepiping or double feeding of a semi-auto pistol. The only problem with a PCC or an any kind of AR caliber firearm for home defense is you get those one in a couple 100,000, 10,000 double feeds that are just remedial. Remedial action becomes a whole problem.
Well, I think from the gunsmithing or armorer angle, you know, everybody, you know, that's the question. Does it take Glock mags? And the thing with sub guns or guns that are taking a pistol caliber that are going to be small, compact, whether it's historically something like the Sten gun, the Thompson submachine gun, anything like that. I mean, the most successful designs are going to revolve around a dual stack, dual feed, stick mag with a very vertical, or as vertical as you can get it, grip angle. And when we make AR9s or modern AR9s, because they're not like Colt SMG 9s, but modern AR9s that are AR platform, direct blowback, but they take Glock magazines because that's what everyone wants. You start to encounter issues where, the more vertical the grip angle, the better. Double stack, that's great, but then when it comes to single feed, like a Glock magazine, that's not what you want on a sub gun. You want dual feed, double stack, as vertical as possible, just a machine that is feeding those rounds. And when you start moving into like an APC 9K that takes, Glock mags, or, Freedom Ordnance, AR9 that takes Glock mags, or everything under the sun that takes Glock mags, or even a Kel-Tec Sub 2000 that takes Glock mags. Everybody's all about the Glock mags, and it's cool for interchangeability of ammo and mags. But the problem is, when you are not using an ideal magazine for a gun that needs something different, you are going to be at risk for getting jams, double feeds, problems.
I guess like the short version that Ryan might be getting to, let me see if I can cut to the quick here, is Eugene Stoner didn't design the AR with a Glock mag in mind, so that's probably not the right feed method. But I'm not Eugene Stoner. I don't work for Armalite. I don't work for Knights Armament, so maybe I got that a little bit wrong. But that's what I'm getting the takeaway there from.
The hardcore Glock boys would say that the fanboys,
that Gaston was the right man for the job.
Eugene Stoner messed up when he didn't design the when he didn't design the AR-15 with the Glock magazine.
He came so close with that extreme Glock angle and polymer plastics, and Eugene was so close, except he wasn't Gaston.
Even though it predates Gaston Glock and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. How dare two men come up with a rifle versus Gaston and his committee?
Oh man. Well, my biggest argument against PCCs or pistol caliber carbines, whenever we can help it, it really comes down to if I'm taking on the size and generally the same weight of what I could do with an AR pistol or an SBR.
Why give up the power?
Why? Yeah, exactly. Why reduce down to a pistol caliber, which sucks? And instead, why don't we go with a shouldered necked rifle case?
You're losing kinetic energy, you're losing velocity, you're losing range, you're losing just capability for size.
And that's range is a huge part of that equation where, I want something that I could defend the house with and get on the rooftop or go outside, and I can still do 200 meters or potentially more and still be effective.
So like one of those nothing fancy without rule of law kind of things.
Yeah, but with less knife or watch reviews involved.
Not that we have anything against nothing fancy. He's awesome.
No.
Also, no connection to him.
I'm not going to say his real name here, but he's a good guy. He is, and his heart's in a great place. But I would be like in Iraq or Afghanistan, like either deployment. If you handed me a PCC, even in 10 millimeter, yes, of course, with 10 millimeter Glock mags, I would be wildly disappointed.
Said the guy who actually carried a 1911 in Iraq for a little bit.
Hey man, you gotta, John Moses Brown.
You know me, I'm not hating on the 1911. That's my bread and butter, but that is literally not for everybody. By the way, not a first time gun at all.
Yeah,
do not do that.
That's a good segue into the 1911. Yeah, so...
Caveat, you will not find two bigger 1911 fanboys than Mr. Second Amendment or Range Chris. He's got his sitting next to him. I've got mine sitting next to me. We are the John Moses Browning fan club. We're there.
Yeah, from a historical angle, John Moses Browning was way ahead of his time. And every now and then I'll get in a Browning A5 that I need to repair or fix or look at. And I had M240 my first deployment, dismounted in Afghanistan up in the mountains, fucking around, and that is basically a BAR that's upside down and belt fed. And then, the M250 cal, which was my Iraq baby when I was a Crows gunner. I mean, like, John Moses Browning has made his impact on American small arms.
For the last 100 years?
Military and civilian and hunting weapons, which is still seen to this day. The Browning tilting barrel design is still used in everything from the Glocks, the CZ, Smith & Wesson, 6 Hour 320, everything. So Range Chris and I have nothing but love and respect for our Lord and Savior, John Moses Browning. Absolutely. Praise be his name. But, from a historical standpoint, it's cool. From a patriotic standpoint, how he, designed guns so rapidly and sold them next to nothing to Uncle Sam just so we could win a World War or two.
Just out of support of his own country. It's amazing.
And he didn't do anything in decimals. He did everything in fractions. And still to this day, I'll get an old school 1911 or pocket hammerless, or something in. I'll be like, wow, just like how did he do this in an age before CNC machining and CAD, computer designing and everything? Like, how did this guy, I don't know. And as much as I love the 1911, which I carry to this day because 45 ACP is easier to get than it is 9mm, which we'll get to. And I've carried a 1911 for years, carried that thing, in Haditha and next to the Euphrates and Iraq and everything. Over 100 years later, still getting shit done, fighting America's wars. And let me tell you, I always felt confident having a 1911 on mission, where it's like, dude, I got 230 grains of hardball. Nothing's going to survive this if I'm doing my part.
Dudes will talk a lot of shit about 1911s, especially guys who carry Glocks. But I'll tell you what, it doesn't fucking matter what's on your hip when you got your M4 or your AR-15 in your hands. It doesn't matter. Just worth a shit. But once you get within 15 yards, handgun's handgun.
Yeah, the bottom line is I have historic and patriotic and, I guess, anecdotal, appreciation for the 1911 and John Browning and everything he did for his country and firearms development. And as much as I love the 1911 and as much as Range Chris loves it too, the first thing that I'll definitely say is it is not the beginner's handgun. And that's not to be snooty or snobby or make it sound like some kind of cool guy, old boys club. The 1911 is not for your novice shooter, and it's not something I would recommend to literally anyone.
I mean, anything with a grip safety is not for a novice. Anything with a thumb safety is not for a novice. You combine those two, and you're just like... A 1911 is a gun for somebody who wants and desires to shoot a 1911. That should really be your criteria. Like, if that person isn't coming up to you and being like, hey, I want to shoot 1911s, don't recommend it. Capacity is, maybe 8 rounds if you get a Wilson Combat or newer mag. 7 rounds factory.
Well, I run the Chip McCormick Power 10, so that's going to be 11 on board the gun. It's just the 1911, I mean, it's a woeful power deficit of only having 7, 8, or 10 rounds before you reach slide lock, and then it's time to reload. Compared to some gangbanger or somebody who's got a Glock 17 or whatever it is, and he can shoot everything he's got in his magazine before it's time to reload. Meantime, you've reached slide lock twice. If there's any advantage, at least if you really put the reps in, you know how to reload.
Well, let me throw an anecdote to that. When I was at Fort Campbell with the 101st, I had an NCO staff sergeant who swore up and down that you needed to carry a Glock 19 because you got 15 round base mag and then 17 plus 2 backup mags, and you need to have 3 mags on you total. And I looked at him and I was like, Sergeant, how many guys are you planning on fighting? Like, you're in a dark alley and 30 guys come at you? Because he was like, man, you need to establish fire superiority just like on a machine gun team. And I was like, what? That makes no sense. In a civilian shooting and in a fucking, life-sustaining shootout, right, where someone comes up to you, you maybe 4 guys, maybe. But you're not going to have, like, everybody coming at you with fucking an L-shaped ambush and machine gun nest and throwing claymores off at you. That's not going to happen. So, 8 rounds, that'll do you, brother.
I can understand, because he sounds like me, where after my different life experiences, I guess, I look at a magazine not as a piece of metal or plastic that holds bullets in it. I look at a magazine for a gun as distance. How far can I get with suppression and covering fire? How far can I go with this before I reach bolt lock or slide lock? I don't look at magazines as, how many rounds they hold and how much, metal or P-mag or whatever. I look at it as distance. How far can I go before this shit runs out? And I think maybe we weren't, but I think we're on the same wavelength. But with, and I think that's definitely of note. Like in a individual self-defense, lawful self-defense in defense of life kind of encounter that a civilian is going to have, at least on this side of the planet in our country. You're not going to be shooting like 10,000 magazines worth of ammunition. Like it's not going to be like the North Hollywood shootout. It's going to be, probably several shots, and that shit is over or close to being over. And the argument has been made, well, if, it's probably only going to be 3 to 5 shots, why don't I just carry a 45 or a 1911? And problem number one I have is, 1911, at least in its true form, 5-inch government, all steel, 45 ACP, which is like how the fuck it should be, says us. But that thing is heavy. It's heavy. The only redeeming value I think it has is the fact that it's slender, which is, a valuable dimension when it comes to concealed carry. And the sight radius is long. But also the trigger and reset are quite fantastic.
Phenomenal.
I can take the biggest shit kicker garbage budget 1911, some Rock Island shit, and I can compare that trigger to the best polymer framed modern defensive duty pistol, maybe an HK VP9, and I'll compare them side by side. And the bottom shelf 1911 is always going to be better than the best that they can offer in the polymer modern produced.
Now, it might just eke it out by a little bit, but that little bit is what matters on that trigger.
And that's the thing is, for years I carried the 1911 for sight radius, for comfort, for grip angle, for the slender profile, which made it conducive to concealed carry inside the waistband, especially as a bigger guy. For the trigger and reset, but it's just not. It's a huge obstacle when it comes to exposed hammer, manual safety, grip safety, single action only, rounds limited, and by the way, recoil is kind of stout for those who are new. And
not just by the way, recoil is very stout for those who don't know what they're doing yet. That's
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, it's literally like we said, it's not a first time shooter's gun. It's just not.
No, it's not, and it's like, as gunsmith angle, historical angle, and personal angle from Iraq. I mean, it's like I have so much love and appreciation and respect for John Browning and the 1911, and the fact that he made a pistol that is still, one of the most produced guns on the planet, and it is still available and still serving our military over a century later, among some of his other guns.
Mind you, not widely, but there are still dudes out there.
Still dudes out there. I mean, I had one in Iraq, and it was pretty rad, but not common. But at the same time, if I had a first-time handgun purchaser, a 1911 of any iteration, not recommended. A 1911 that's a full-size, all-steel, 5-inch barrel government model on 45 ACP, 100% not recommended.
If they insisted that's the size I would recommend, you start getting a Commander or just forget about it. No, don't. No, absolutely not.
You can get away with the Commander, but what I've seen with customer guns and things coming in for repair and other stuff like that, I mean, the problem is, well, the beauty of it, it's kind of a curse. The beauty of it is the gun, the 5-inch all-steel 1911 was designed for the 45 ACP caliber. And the caliber was invented by John Browning for that gun. So the gun and the caliber were designed to flawlessly work together. So the problem is when you start chopping off parts of the barrel and the slide and everything, you can get away with it on Commander size. You still can. But then when you start moving into the officer size is when you start to have problems.
Or you change up the caliber.
The caliber, you can work with it provided you move into some high power design features of like, a feed ramp being part of the barrel and everything. But the problem is when you start chopping that design down and you're not taking any effort to redesign other features on the gun. And I think, I got to hand it to 6 Hour with their P238 and their 938, Springfield with their 911 and everything else, where they took a 1911, they shrunk it down, and they basically had to make a whole new gun. Because you can't simply just start hacking parts off the gun and just call it good. You have to just fundamentally redesign that gun. So I think, for our listeners, I think we've gone on too long about the 1911, but the long story short is I don't think either of us at all would recommend a 1911 or 1911 patterned gun at all as a first-time defensive handgun.
Now I'm going to use that to springboard us into something we need to be back on topic.
Let's talk about it.
Without the proper training, if you're not willing to put in the reps, if you're not willing to go out there and find the knowledge, and mind you, right now in this time, it's very hard to get good training, especially since all these first-time gun buyers are coming up. And they're like, "Oh crap, what do? I have this thing and I don't know how to use it." And then they go back and they're like, "Well, when can I get a class?" And classes are now booked 2 months out. Mm-hmm. It's all about the knowledge. It's all about knowledge, really, and just expanding what you know and what you can do. And that goes so doubly so for 1911s. But that is just even across the board with rifles, shotguns, pistols. Mind you, that's like shotgun being, I would say, in my opinion, the less finessed, slightly easiest discipline. I mean, it's got its quirks and it's got its difficulties.
I just like it because with a shotgun, with a pump action 5-shot shotgun, I could go anywhere in the country.
All right, let me caveat that. All right, so short range rifle is probably the easiest discipline. Shotgun would be the next easiest discipline. Long range rifle would be the next most difficult discipline, and then handguns would just be the absolute hard mode.
Yeah, I would actually. I would agree with that for sure. I would, and it's kind of weird with the history of the United States that the shotgun has always been there as a coach gun, riding shotgun, and settling the West, and as a farming tool and just a necessity of life, but also
from the colonists when we first got over here on the Mayflower, just shotguns used for putting birds on the table,
just blunderbuss and scattergun concept, but also there's that historic heritage part of it, but there's also the law, and with the 1934 National Firearms Act and the 86 Miller Amendment and everything else, where would we be if the Second Amendment was totally uninfringed? I don't think it would be handguns. I don't think it would, because they are the hardest to get good with. They are anemic and the least effective caliber, even when you're placing the best shots you can, assuming you have the skill and experience and training to be placing those shots, especially in a moment of duress. I think we'd be moving towards other kinds of things, but it's the handgun is, I think everybody thinks of it like a gangster gun or a concealed gun, or you're up to no good with it. And I think it's kind of a side note. I've seen people that they've had plenty of hunting rifles and hunting shotguns, but the handguns they never had a handgun in the house. Like, oh my god, like I'll do rifles and shotguns. I'm talking like 300 Win Mag, 30-06, 12 gauge, 10 gauge. They're gonna have these super powerful, crazy rifles and shotguns, but they're not willing to have a handgun because that was just like, oh, that's like a bad guy gun or whatever. Like that's just not what we're about. I don't understand it. I view the handgun as not ideal in the vast majority of circumstances. Handguns are convenient because we can carry them on our person when we're going about our day with a concealed carry permit or whatever, and we're doing our thing. It makes the most sense. It's convenient. It's great for a lot of things, but when it comes to hit probability, marksmanship, accuracy, placing effective shots, and the terminal ballistics and effectiveness of the cartridges out of the short barrels and short sight radius that we're actually delivering it out of, handguns, quite honestly and very bluntly, they just fucking suck.
They're difficult because a just millimeter or less than a millimeter being off at 10 yards will completely throw your shot wide. If your sights just are a millimeter off at 10 yards, you're going to hit left, right, up, down, and center bullseye. But the cool thing is, and the reason I want to harp on, because training and people being able to find training was one of the major topics that Brian and I said we were going to talk about.
We have to get back to that.
If you can get the training, if you can put in the time and the effort, and you can get a good coach or get a good mentor for shooting, the cool thing about the fundamentals of shooting is they apply evenly across all disciplines. And the better you get at those fundamentals, the better you will be at every single discipline of shooting. If you drastically improve your pistol shooting, you will find that your shotgun shooting, your rifle shooting gets better. If you spend the time and effort and the discipline to learn how to shoot very, very long distances and the patience it takes to make a good hit with a long distance rifle, you'll find that your pistol shooting will just be a little bit more accurate. Same with close range rifle. And it's one of those things where, one, if you understand bullet drop, which is really, and shot drop with a shotgun, if you understand that across all disciplines, that's universal across all things. It just becomes a second nature thing that in the back of your mind you're already correcting for, and you're already figuring out, okay, if I'm holding my sight picture here, I've got X amount of distance, and this is all like becomes second nature. You don't even think about it, your brain just does it. And you understand that you need to adjust this way or that way in order to get the bullet to fly through the air, in order react against gravity, with gravity, in order to hit where you want it to go. And I like pistol shooting because I personally, like Ryan, thinks it's the most difficult discipline. And the more I practiced at pistol shooting, I found the better I got with everything else. It helped me with my patience when it came to long distance rifle shooting with my 308. It helped me with my sight alignment and basically doping and drop compensation with my EOTech on my AR. And if anybody out there has ever shot shotgun with a handgun or tried to do trap shooting with a pistol, it really helps you with tracking and follow through on clay pigeons if you try shooting it, especially with the 1911 when you got that big old bullet just slowly turtling down its way at the clay as it goes. But so it's handgun shooting for me. Really, it gives you this wide fan that just applies to everything else. But for that, I mean, at this point, I've been shooting for 22 years. And mind you, for the last like 3-4 years, I haven't really gotten any trigger time, so I'm fucking trash now. But, which Mr. Second Amendment can confirm. But
hell yeah.
he can also tell you that at one point in time, I used to be hot shit. But regardless.
Used to be, but now if you got a barn door trying to fight you, I think you'll be fine.
Okay, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. It's not that. But regardless, you focus on your discipline. You focus on your fundamentals. I can't stress that enough. If you don't know the fundamentals, you can look them up. You can YouTube them. If you need somebody who's just scraping by, they can't find a class, they can't get in anywhere, recommend them the fundamentals. Just tell them to look that up and just watch as many videos as possible on fundamentals. And they will be better for it if that's all they've got is just watching somebody list for them fundamentals.
Yeah, there's a couple thoughts that came to mind there. One is I 100% agree that with pistols, if I took someone who never shot a gun ever and I taught them effectively how to utilize the fundamentals on a pistol, a handgun, and just randomly gave them a rifle or a shotgun, they'd be fine. If I taught somebody on a shotgun or a rifle first, and then after they had that down, I gave them a handgun, they would fucking suck. And I think handguns, I shoot them the most because I always have a handgun or carry a handgun everywhere I go, but it's also the most convenient. But also, as a shooter, it's the most challenging. It's unrelenting when it comes to anything you are fucking up when it comes to your fundamentals. And placing shots and knowing yourself and, sight alignment, sight picture, breathing, trigger squeeze, or trigger press, whatever you want to call it. Like, there's the handgun, like, there's no cover. It's going to show it all. And it's going to show you, if you're willing to be humble enough to see it, what you need to fix and correct. And handguns, I think, in the context of this podcast, they're not going to be very kind to the brand new shooter because there's so much work they have to do, and in times like these, ammunition may be really sparse to find, and training, at least where I work, is 2 months booked out, that they're not going to have that kind of personal care and instruction and training on how to be effective with their handgun. And if I want, citizens who are legally and rightfully tapping into their Second Amendment to lawfully defend themselves in circumstances of legitimate self-defense and defense of life, I want them to be effective. And with a handgun or a pump-action shotgun with minimal to no training, I think they stand the least chances of success. And that's kind of the challenge right there, is finding the right gun that's going to work for this person. And, at least as on the sales side of the counter, when I'm not working on guns and when I help out on the counter, and I deal with people who, whether it's limited budget or open budget, they have all the money in the world, they don't care, but I don't have the inventory I need, and whatever gun I sell them, I don't have the ammo to go with, and then here's our classes, but they're booked out for the next 2 months, and I'm just like starting to stack all of these disadvantages or barricades in the way of this person being competent and effective with the gun that they choose. And we don't even have ammo for our rental guns on the range, so they can't even test drive these guns to figure out which one they personally like and can hit with and love. So, like, when you start looking at all these obstacles in the way of providing the right gun, you're kind of looking at, and then, expectation management of looking at how often would they train, can they find the ammo, how much are they going to practice, are they even going to get qualified, credentialed, trustworthy competent training, or are they just going to buy this with like 2 boxes of shells if I even have it in stock, and they're just going to kind of, go out there and do it. I guess kind of the conundrum or the prisoner's dilemma here is trying to find the right gun that we have in stock that they can find ammo for, and knowing they're not going to get the training at least anytime soon, but you still want them to be effective with that gun, but they don't know what they don't know, and they don't understand what they're getting into. They're excited, but they don't know anything, and they're interested, whether it's reluctantly or, they wanted to be there. There's so many variables that every person I deal with is a completely new game. It's a completely new show, and depending on the hour or the day, it's a completely different inventory. And I think that's what's making it tough right now, of trying to find what is the best gun for the brand new gun buyer who has great, lawful, moral, honest intentions of just trying to protect their family. How do we make this work in a way that's going to be successful? And the answer depends on the hour of the day and the week, quite honestly.
Okay, so real quick, final thoughts, kind of as we wrap this particular episode and topic up, is number one, just to put this out there, anything is better than nothing.
True.
Whatever you can get your hands on, that there's ammo for, that fits your hand, that you can use. Any gun that you have is better than a gun that you don't have. Rather have and not need than need and not have, guys. That's especially in this time. And if you can, which no one can predict the future. If you've got a Madame Cleo kind of power and you can just get ahead of everybody else, great. But there's always a little bit of warning signs. Like, I think back in January, we probably could have predicted a little bit more of what was going to happen out here. But staying ahead of the curve as best you can, right? If you see that maybe things are getting a little hinky, maybe like your day of like a George Floyd thing, maybe it's about time at that moment, maybe you should consider yourself, that's the time to get over to the gun store real quick and buy up as much 9mm as your wallet and or wife will let you afford, or your husband in that matter.
I think it's kind of like gold or bullion or the stock market, where ideally, if you have the capital and you're able to, and you can kind of see what's going on, you're going to buy when things are cheap and plentiful, and you're going to buy and stockpile. And it's like, before Christmas of 2019, that was the time to buy guns and ammo, seek out the training. You could get any gun you wanted, as much ammo of any caliber you wanted. You could go anywhere to get trained, anywhere to do anything, and it was not a big deal. And with, coronavirus and all this stuff going on, and the run on guns, everything is kind of limited. And we want to end up with a purchase that would have been a good purchase before this and still will be a worthwhile purchase when all this is done. But at the same time, if you have an immediate need for defense, you want to get something you can use, how to use, and you're good to go. You can find ammo for it. Hopefully you can get some kind of training for it. But just do what you can. But I sold some ammo today, and made almost $500 on ammo and primers and reloading components and things that I've had for probably just about a decade, that I've been storing in ammo cans, and I've just bought as surplus in case I needed it, but really it was more than I needed all the time, and it's extra that I didn't personally need. And it's among the list of things that you can set yourself up for the future. Besides, 401k and the stock market and a Roth or regular IRA, or bullion or gold or hard goods. Something else that is an investment or something else that is worth your time, that probably means, I would say, more than pieces of paper or pieces of metal, is a gun, ammunition, training, confidence and competency, knowing how to use it, and having ammo on hand to be able to use these things effectively to save your own life, or at least have that peace of mind that you can take care of your family and your home, and make sure that individual responsibility that we talked so hard about in part one, that you can actually take care of that in a meaningful way. So I think we have a couple items left.
I got one last thing, and it's kind of a fun thing. It's not too serious, and it's if you're not familiar, there was a movie that came out called Jurassic Park, and it's a great film.
Yes,
it's a series of films. There's about 5 of them out now, and
we did watch the original gangster, Jurassic Park 1.
Right,
we saw that like a week ago or something like that.
A great film, and then we were in the car the other day, and I had actually done this with some buddies of mine when I was in Germany, and they didn't really want to play along. It was kind of boring, and they didn't really give me good answers. But I posed to Ryan. I was like, "All right, so you're at Jurassic Park, okay? It's not Lost World. It's Jurassic World, right? It's one of the newer ones. You're working on the island. You're working for Jurassic Park. Every now and then, you have to go out into the park itself, and you can get 2 long guns and a handgun to carry. What do you carry? Go."
Okay, so I'm in charge of the security team, or I'm one of the security members working for Jurassic Park.
Yeah, you're just essentially like a park ranger or what have you there at the park. You're more like a paramilitary contractor, I suppose.
Okay, and
I'm not going to limit you. I'm not going to say, okay, there's an organized, you only have this, and this to choose from. If you had all the money that you could, because you're working at this extremely dangerous place, you've got the paycheck, you've spared no expense.
Yeah.
You can carry what you want. You got all the equipment you need. What are the 2 long guns and 1 sidearm that you carry?
2 long guns and 1 sidearm.
Correct.
That's really tough to answer, but from, I guess, in this hypothetical question here, sidearm would have to be a Smith & Wesson 500. As much as I know it seems hypocritical for as much as I've talked shit on revolvers this whole time.
Yeah, but I mean, it kind of makes sense in this situation where you got fucking dinosaurs.
I just if it has to be exactly 1 sidearm, it's going to be something that can do some shit against big game. In this case, prehistoric game, I guess. But Smith & Wesson 500. Probably with a 6 or 7 inch barrel, just something long that produces velocity, and some kind of shoulder rig, which I would just carry the whole time. Everything I'm doing and everywhere I go, I'm just going to have, this powerhouse hand cannon that can do everything from, I guess, the small game or small dinosaurs or whatever to the big shit. And then you said 2 long guns.
2 long guns.
I would have to go with definitely number 1, and it's, oh man, you got me in a fix here because I've talked shit about revolvers and shotguns, but yeah, the Smith & Wesson 500. But in terms of long gun, number 1 would be a shotgun. It would have to be.
Yeah, but we're not talking about home defense here. We're talking about being out in the field. So
well,
it kind of makes a little more
but
sense.
What I'm saying, I would do a Benelli M4 with the wireframe collapsing stock and the extended, 9-shot total tube magazine for it. And, my thought on that is I could do slugs for the big stuff, buckshot, birdshot, whatever I need. I could make it happen with, number 1 would have to be a shotgun because, if we're dealing with huge 4-legged threats, a shotgun, 12 gauge with a slug, I mean,
T-Rex is bipedal, man. You got that too.
I think if I had a Benelli M4 with 3-inch Magnum slugs, fully loaded, and just sending it on a T-Rex, I think that would cause problems for the T-Rex. I think. I would like to think. Because we're dealing with huge muscle mass, huge rib cage and bone density. We're dealing with huge animals where you just got to crush and penetrate and push through to make the fastest results you can get to stop a threat or a problem. So yeah, I would go with the Benelli M4 with the wireframe stock and the full 9-shot tube on it, and of course, knowing me, it's got to have a red dot and a weapon light on it. But I would also do slugs, buckshot, and birdshot that the gun liked and that it fed reliably with and could cycle. And then long gun number 2 would probably be an M1A. Not because I like the M14, because I actually don't. And not because I like the M1A, because I don't like that one either, but I have a lot of time with M14s. And 308, I could do some like 220 grain, core locked or some heavy stuff. 20 round mags, weapon light, low power, variable optic over the receiver, and just kind of, I don't know, could reach out a little bit, at least 200 yards or less. Shotgun for anything with the multiple loads, and then Smith & Wesson 500 to deal with, at least give me the best chance to deal with anything on the island, out of a handgun. So that's I think that's what I would do. Yeah.
Okay, so my answer to this was a little bit more simple-minded, and I've been thinking of this for a while since I initially asked it, and it's changed a little bit, but not quite, because my initial answer way back when I first asked this question was I'd keep my 1911 on me, but I'm gonna say in this particular instance, with kind of what little we know about dinosaurs, but what we do know is if they are pack hunters. I'm going to start with sidearm. Sidearm's going to be a Glock 19 or a Glock 19X for capacity, and then just hollow points are going to be it's 19X with plus B plus just for capacity, and most a lot of the dinosaurs they have, if you watch the films, aren't huge. There are big ones out there, but not the mass majority of meat eaters. So I figure that'll in that situation will get me pretty far, and then. My number one primary long gun is going to be a PWS piston-driven 308 AR with a LPVO, low-powered variable optic, just for 25 rounds of 308 rapid stopping power, because I think that'll get me, at least if I don't kill it, I'm going to hurt it bad enough where it's not going to want to come after me, and that's kind of my plan there. Regardless, I'm going to rely heavily on fight or flight by just drilling whatever creature or animal is coming after me. And then my secondary long arm, which I'd probably keep attached to my backpack, would be a M4A1 loaded with the I can't remember the military designation for the new tungsten.
M855 Alpha 1.
That's right, the M855.
Dude, that thing goes through engine blocks. It's awesome.
And I would load my M4 up with that, and some.
Not that I would know.
I mean, I'm actually more embarrassed than he is. He knows it. I don't, and I've carried the stuff. So it's what does that say? But some flip it to happy and a little turn and burn if I got to get out of there real quick.
So with
the quick mag changes.
I would love so desperately to have an AR-15 because that's my go-to.
Well, how about this? All right, let me expand it. Okay, let's say that we've got those gas-powered Jeeps from the first movie, the Wranglers. You can have 2 more long guns in there. What do you go with?
2 more long guns.
So you've got 2 long guns on you. You've got your handgun on you. You got 2 more long guns in the trucks.
I would definitely negate or give up the 2 long guns in the Jeep. If it meant I could get a belt-fed machine gun on the Jeep. But if that's not what's going on, then the 2 long guns staying within the parameters of the question.
I mean, I'm going to classify a saw as a long gun, so...
Well, it depends. Paratrooper version pretty short. But I would go with, if I had to stick with 2 long guns, it would be a Barrett M107 Alpha 1 with a suppressor on it. Because 50 BMG is a hell of a drug. And that thing, that thing brings down buildings. It's awesome. I love it. But
not gonna go Jerry Mikulik with 2 of those bad Larrys and just fire Kimbo.
No, dude, I'm going Haditha, man. I want to have the ability to bring down buildings if I need to, which I wouldn't. But it'd be a Barrett M107 Alpha 1 with a suppressor. I think that'd be pretty tight. And then second long gun would be an AR-15. Have some soft point, Federal or Remington 223 that's got something. But I just, as much as I absolutely love the AR-15, if you're placing me in some kind of environment with dinosaurs or Jurassic Park, I couldn't. The AR-15 I think is really good for people fighting and people defense, but it's not. I just don't want to deal with that with huge dinosaurs. I mean, there's a lot of dinosaurs it could apply to, but I'm just thinking of everything in my loadout would be worst case scenario. So Barrett M107 Alpha 1 with the suppressor, AR-15, M1A, Benelli M4 shotgun, and Smith & Wesson 5 hundo, and then if I could do, a Glock 9mm on the hip and shoulder rig,
now you're
a 500.
You're throwing in an extra handgun. That's
But I would be the weirdo that would have 2 handguns on me at all times. It'd be Glock 19 and a Smith & Wesson 500, and I would carry both. I adamantly would if that was me, but that's outside the question. So.
Well, if I had the Jeep with 2 extra guns, I'd probably have a Mark 48 on a spindle, 308, like saw size something, or Pendle on top of the rack, just in case. And then I would probably also go with the Benelli M4 and just the variety pack that you get from Ammunition Choice there. That's a really good call.
Now we want to do the shotgun. Well, for a stretch, about 5 months, I had a Mark 48 in Afghanistan, at least before the Navy found out that we had stolen them, and they
borrowed them,
acquired them, and did not give them back. And we hid those. Dismounted missions were the best with the Mark 48. But once the Navy had found out that we had them and we couldn't hide it any longer, they were reacquired or confiscated from us, and we had 240 Bravos, which I didn't complain about except for the weight and size. Getting in and out of CH-47s and UH-60s with those things was horrible. But anyway, getting back to the question, the Mark 48, if it's going to be attached to the Jeep, you might as well just go for a billet steel receiver, John Browning design.
Yeah, but I can just pull that pin and then it's mobile, good to go.
Yeah, which the Mark 48 would have the advantage, unless you had a 240 Lima, which would be lighter. But yeah, the Mark 48 would have the advantage. But if you're sparing no expense, except for your IT, except for your IT guys or whatever, you could do it. Yeah, you could finance that.
All right, everybody, that's all we had for today. That was the last kind of topic. If you guys want to leave in the comments what you guys would choose, we'd probably love to see that.
Yeah, and if you guys leave in the comments, additional aspects of this we haven't covered or things that you think we should have discussed, then, we can do a follow-up. We can do a part 3. But, things have been pretty fast and loose, and inventory has been really bad, and it's been the coronavirus stuff and the protests and everything else going on that has really amped up, people buying guns and ammo like crazy. And then, by the way, we still have an election to get through, so it's only going to get worse. So, it's tough times in terms of, people suddenly discovering their Second Amendment and suddenly discovering that they are responsible for themselves, and trying to find the best pick for them. And I think also the bottom line there is it's a ever-changing situation. Guns, ammo, politics, world events, all of these things are changing all the time. So it's never going to be a fixed variable. It's never going to make sense. But I think, Range Chris and I think we can say that, we would like somebody to seek out training, get a gun that they are competent and confident with, that is quality, that is durable, that's reliable, that you can still relatively find ammunition for, no matter what the circumstances are, depending, and have the ability to defend your families and your homes. I think that's the big thing right there. So
stay safe, seek knowledge, and just take care of yourselves. That's all I got.
There we go. That's it.
Bye.